I walk in my truth and I own my truth. Friend, have you ever been in a car with a group of people you know? Same destination. But when you get out of the car and you ask each other to reflect on the journeys, everyone has a different version of the ride that you just took. Well, that is exactly what truth is. It's yours, it's mine, and it's layered. Today's episode, we are going to dig deep and get to the root of truth because it's not singular and it's not universal and it evolves. We are going to unpack what it means to own your truth, even when it changes, even when it's challenged, and especially when it's not universally understood. Are you ready? Get set. Let's grow. Hey, friends. Hey, welcome back to From the Ground to the Crown, a podcast community where we grow with intention, elevate our mindset, and step into our highest selves unapologetically. I'm your host, your girl, Kenesha B, and I'm so grateful that you're here today with me. Today's episode is about truthful. That is the affirmation that we're focused on. That's the theme for today's podcast episode. And I am starting with, of course, a card from my Hey Friend Hey affirmation deck. And it says, be honest about your truths, friend. When you are open and share honestly, you inspire others to live more fully and more fearlessly. And the affirmation is, I walk in my truth, I own my truth, and I own my truth. This is hella powerful, especially in today's world where there's so much disinformation and misinformation, so many truths, so much conflict. It's like, but hopefully after this podcast episode, you will feel a little bit more comfortable owning your truth, walking in your truth, and not needing the validation or for others to understand your truth in order to simply live it. That's my goal with this episode. I want to take some time to introduce you and welcome the Root and Rise segment today. I know I don't often share the background and intention of this part of the episodes, but Root and Rise is really where we take a thought that was once rooted and had us stuck, and we dig deep into like what the foundation of it is, what the root of it is, and then we elevate it to a crowned perspective so that we can choose a different experience and we can choose a different way of living, really. So that's Root and Rise, right? I just wanted to give that to you guys. So if this is your first time joining us at From the Crown to the Ground, or if this is not your first time, that's really where this comes from. I give you some thoughts and questions to the root of the affirmation or the topic of today's episode. And then we have a little share story time. And then we end with some rise questions and where we want to take the topic. So again, we're talking about truth today. And I mentioned this earlier, but truth is not singular and it's not universal. And I know we were taught that. And I know that there are some exceptions to that rule. But for the most part, people are living their own damn experiences and it has no bearing on yours. And that is really the toughest part, I think, for me and maybe for others, is just acceptance of that truth, is that is not singular. Truth is a reflection of experience, healing, and perspective. So going back to the car metaphor that I used earlier, you're in the car, you might have your sister, you might have your brother, you might have your significant other, you can have your besties, your parents, whoever. You got your people in your car. You're driving, so you riding around and getting it. And everybody else is having their own experience. You get to your destination and you're like, oh, how was the ride? So many experiences have happened. So many things that people saw. So many things that you didn't see. No bearing on your experience of the ride. Your truth is your truth. Their truth is their truth. And the same way you can accept that people have had a different experience, even though they were in the same car as you, is the same way that you should live your life. Accepting that people have different experiences. And as long as it's not harmful to you, as long as it's not like degrading or demeaning to your experience, who cares? Did we make it here safely is the goal. Did we arrive on time? Okay. Those things are way more and not important, because I don't want to use that word, but the priority of what matters is not whether or not people's truths are yours, but is it conflicting? Does it make the world better? Does it make them feel good? Cool. And I missed this, y'all. The ism of today's episode, because this is something that's super funny to me, and I'll tell you why. The ism of today's episode is, I love that for you. If you have had conversations with me in the past maybe 3 years, you would have heard me say, I love that for you. And I mean it when I say it. And I'm smiling so hard because I have 2 girlfriends who I hang out with back in Atlanta, and we usually are at networking events together. And they will hear me say, I love that for you, when I'm talking to somebody. And I say it with passion, and I mean what I'm saying, because I do. Here is why it's funny. Because whatever I've said in response, whenever I say that in response to someone, it is probably because I've detached from whatever they've just told me. And like, not that I didn't hear them or not that I don't care, but it has no bearing on my thing, on what I'm doing, on my mindset, on anything in my life. And so I love that for you. Not for me. For me, I don't care. Like, whatever. Do your thing. If someone's like, hey, Kenesha, I just started calling myself a fairy today, you will probably hear me say, I love that for you. Call yourself a fairy. You want to be a fairy today? Be a fairy today. I'm not a fairy today. I don't call myself a fairy today. I don't care necessarily that you call yourself a fairy today. I love that for you. And so this ism is something that we're going to weave into today's episode, because that detachment from needing to believe other people's truths, to like agree with other people's truths, that detachment comes from things like, I love that for you. Yours, my truth. They all exist. They're fine. So let's keep going. We got the ism. We've got the affirmation. We understand why we're here. Let's get to the root of this episode. I've got 4 questions for you. First one, what belief did you once call truth that no longer fits who you are today? Have you ever felt defensive about your truth when someone presented a conflicting version of theirs? Baby, been there. Okay? What would happen if you stopped trying to prove your truth and simply lived it? Man, I've come a long way. And I'm living my truths today, unfazed by what anyone else considers or thinks or like feels about it. And I will talk about how I've gotten here, because it took a while. And then the last question, why does it feel safer to believe there's only one truth? Damn, yo. They got us a long time ago. We've been bamboozled into thinking that truth is so singular. And like I said earlier, there are exceptions to that rule. There are things that are universally truth, and there's no need for discussion. Like abuse. Abuse is bad. That is the truth. Abuse is wrong, is the truth. There is nowhere in this universe where we need to have conflict about that truth. What can you say that's like, no, I abused them because I was trying to help them out? Like, none of that is ever going to be an untruth. There will only be one universal truth to those things. And so we don't even have to worry about those today, because those are not the truths that I'm discussing. I'm discussing the truths that are based on your experience and the truths that can have many variables of truth to it. Okay, so let's get started on the story for today. And my story really, well, not even the story that I'm going to tell you, but today's discussion is going to be centered around acceptance, expectation, and detachment. And I want to lay those out so that when I come back to each of those points, you understand what I meant. Acceptance. Accepting that multiple truths can and do exist. I don't know if you ever played The Sims, but when I look at my, like, where I live in Bangkok, it reminds me of The Sims. There's so many damn people, so many cars, so many things going on, and like just a view that I am always overwhelmed by how many truths are there. Even when I go to the mall. I don't know if you've like gone to the mall lately or People go to malls? Whatever. But if you go into anywhere where there's a lot of people, airport, mall, whatever, none of these people know you exist. They don't know you. They all have lived a life and they all have truths. And many of them would conflict with your truth. Many of them would be in alignment with your truth. That is how many truths can exist. It's like living in a goddamn multiverse, which we know exists. Multiple dimensions, multiple variables, multiple truths. All of it is also very true. And it might be a big concept, but the focus is having acceptance that there can be multiple truths and that they probably do exist. So let me get into my personal story about truths and where this is coming up for me. My grandma passed away in the beginning of the pandemic, March. Last week made 5 years that she's been gone. Rest in peace to my grandma. And when she was sick, she got sick very quickly in 2020. And she asked me to come down to Florida on my way to like a trip. And I stopped in and she asked me to do her will with her. And I was like, okay, girl, what are you talking about? Because I did not believe that my grandma was that sick. I didn't believe that she was going anywhere. So I was so hesitant to do this. But it's my grandma. Like, I'm going to do exactly what she wants me to do. So I did her will with her. And in that conversation, she also made me the executor of her estate. She didn't ask me. She said to me, you are going to do this. And I am not the grandchild that says no to my grandma. So I did what I was told to do for her. And I knew this was going to bring up conflict in my family because all of my grandma's children, her 5 children are alive. And I knew this was going to have people like this, especially towards me. Now, I'm a big dog. I don't care. Okay? People know that I embrace conflict. I embrace just any moments that feel very ugh to most people. I am pretty comfortable in those moments. I do not mind confrontation. I am so good with differing of opinions, arguing, whatever you want to call it. I'm good with it. Not at it, but good with it. And so when she asked me to do this for her, I knew that was going to come up for my family. Like most of our families, when grief and death is involved, it gets it gets really toxic. And I knew that this was going to be a part of the experience that I was going to have if my grandma passed away. She did. And it came up. And shit got crazy, honestly, y'all. I'm not even going to hold you. My family turned up on me. Oh, God. Oh, my goodness. It was such a hard pill to swallow. It was such a tough experience because there was so much grief there, like, man, my person is gone and our person is gone. And there's so many of us who are feeling the weight of that. But how they did me was like, man, these my people, it's my blood, right? And I couldn't believe it because I didn't think that they would do that to me or to anybody, but really to me, it was like, wow, this is what you really believe to be true about the situation. And so taking a step back really quickly, I knew what was going to happen to me, probably. And I recorded it. I recorded the conversation that I had with my grandma when we did her will, when she asked me to be the executive of her estate. I recorded it and I just held on to it. I told a few people, but I really held it for myself because I knew that I was going to need to have proof of the truth, of this truth, of my grandma and me's truth. And I was going to be the one that was going to have to defend this by myself because now she was no longer here. So funeral happens, all this goes on, a whole bunch of hoopla going on in this family. People stopped talking to me. They started making up nasty things about me. Like, just, it was nasty. And in the midst of it, it's a pandemic now. We're in quarantine. It's like the one time that I wanted to just be closest to my family, it was such a push for me to be in their lives that I just tapped out completely. I let them say what they wanted to say. I did not argue with them about their truths. I just let them go off. Get it out. And the thing that a lot of people know about me is that I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to swallow whatever I'm feeling and I'm going to discuss and talk about it because I want to learn and I always want to get better. And so I was willing to do that with the family members that were willing to meet me there. But for the ones that weren't, for the ones that really turned up on me, after a while, I let them have it. And I had lawyers calling me. They basically said that I lied about the wishes that I executed and that I changed and I was fraudulent and all these things, whatever. Everybody had their own story about how this went down. I let it happen, and then I sent the recording out. And when I tell you mum was the word after I let the recording out, man, let me tell you, my phone stopped ringing. No text messages, nobody being nasty, none of that. Cease and desist. And I knew that was going to happen. I knew that capturing this truth and then bringing it to light was going to cut all the other truths and experiences out. Because sometimes you have the proof that this is a truth that exists, and it didn't make their truths any less true for them. It just invalidated it to a certain extent. And we have to accept that that is the existence that we're living. That people will have these experiences with you, that their truths will exist. And if you have proof of a truth that exists that is prioritized, you can share that. But a lot of times we just need to accept that those people will have those truths. And you have yours that you stand 10 toes down, that you walk in and you own. And that is all that truly matters. And so as I was being berated, talked bad about, lied on, I was living, simply thriving, because I knew the truth that my grandmother said these were her wishes. I knew that that existed. I was just waiting to share it with people once they calmed down and wanted to have a conversation. And 5 years later, a lot of them don't want to believe that that was the truth, even with the recording. They don't even talk to me. And even though that is hurtful to an extent, I understand that if I let these truths bring and mean that much to me, that I'm like harboring negative feelings and discontentment, that only hurts me. It only impacts me. They don't feel any of it. So I release it. I love that for you. I let that go. I'm in Thailand. I am just now in a space, and I just to make it a little personal, but just wrote my grandma a letter in her 5-year anniversary where I asked her to help me get the rest of whatever that is out of me, because I don't want to have any discontent for my family. I don't want to have any ill feelings toward anybody who I feel like did me wrong because they didn't want to believe in that truth. I just want to release all of that because I understand that perspective, healing, and experience is why they owned that truth, why they thought I was that person that did that. And I don't want to care that much about it anymore. I don't want to own it. I just don't want it. And so that is my current truth, is that I'm working on releasing the rest of that experience for myself, because it was really hurtful and it was traumatizing to a certain extent. But I am so much better, and I take those lessons that I've learned and grown in, and I'm grateful for them, because they really make you stronger, and they show you who people are, but they show you who you are too. And whenever I go through those trying times, and whenever I go through those really tough experiences, I come out loving myself so much more, And so when I think back to those, even though it was a hurtful time, I come out like, yo, you killed that. You did what you were supposed to do. You did what she asked you to do. How could that be really bad if I came out so good? And so I challenge you to accept that multiple truths can and do exist in most experiences that we have, and that the conflict with truth and being truthful comes when you think that everybody's experience needs to be the same. When you try to force experiences on other people, that is when it becomes toxic. And so, like I said, I'm still working on it. As you can see, there's still emotions tied to that experience for me, because it sucked. It really did suck. And I miss my family in that way. I miss being around them and being with them, but I am not accepting of people who do not allow communication and conversations to even make space for multiple truths to exist. If you are completely closed off and you think that your thing, your opinion, how you feel is God, is law, cool. Keep that over there. I don't have time or space for that in my life. And so just like that, those people are no longer here. And I'm good. Still teary-eyed, but your girl's okay. Because I am growing to my crown. I'm growing to that elevated perspective. All right, y'all. Let me stop crying on this episode. let's just keep going. So acceptance, accepting that multiple truths can and do exist. Expectation, having the expectation that all truths are, or your truth is just the only one that is valid, is like, and my therapist said this to me once. She said, Kenesha, expectation is writing a play and you having the script and you have all these actors in it and you expect them to know the lines, know where to be, know what scenes they're in, but you never gave them the script. That is expectation. And man, that was really powerful for me because I've had a lot like expectations in life. I expect people to do this because you're this. I expect this from you because you showed me that you're this. I have this expectation. And when she said that, when she said expectation is like you writing a script for a play and you have all the actors and supporting characters in it and you expect them to know where they're supposed to be, expect them to know all their lines, and none of them have ever gotten a copy of the script. That was like for me. Because yes, that is what it is. And that is how this like ties into truth, right? You have this expectation that people will understand and will agree with your truth because it's yours, because they're your bestie, because they're your mom, because whatever. And that is not the truth. That is not it. It's just, that's not how this works. And so as you are digging deep when it comes to truth and being truthful, understand that the expectation that everybody has to agree with your truth, the expectation that everybody has to believe or understand it, is egotistical. And that is something that you should reflect on how you move through, because that will create more chaos and conflict in your life than you need it to. Okay? The next thing about today's conversation is detachment and releasing control. I want to say this to you. Acceptance is not agreement. Acceptance is peace. You get what I'm saying? Earlier when I talked about that experience with my family and my grandma, I accepted that they believed what they thought. They thought I changed the will. They thought I did all these things. They thought I was lying. I accepted that. My peace was knowing that I had proof. But I didn't need them. I didn't want to argue with them like, how could you? Why would I? I'm not asking y'all any of that, because why would I do that when I knew the truth? I was in the experience. They weren't. And so I accepted that they will have all of these things to say. I accepted that that was what they wanted to believe about the experience. And I just dropped the recording like a mixtape, babe, and walked away from it. Because here now you have to sit and you have to figure out why that was so conflicting for you. And they have to do the work now. But in the whole time, I was detaching from needing them to believe me, detaching from needing them to hear and understand me, detaching from needing to convince them that I wasn't who they were trying to make me out to be or who they believed I was. Not trying to make me out to be, because I don't believe anybody could do that, but believe it, like I was not trying to convince them that I had a different experience. I was allowing them to have that experience and thinking, I love that for you. And so when you are able to detach from needing your truth to be a universal truth for everybody in the experience, you release control, and not explaining away or not trying to defend your truth is peace. It's like, I can let people think what they want to think and I don't have to care about it. Unless it's harming you or causing some type of conflict in your life. No, let me not say that, because lies cause conflict for sure. But unless it's harming you, like physically, like taking money out your pocket, like gonna leave you homeless type harming, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what people believe. Honestly, they're gonna do what they want to do anyway. So why would you sit there and create more contention in your life trying to, get people on your side, get people behind your truth? You don't have to do any of those things. And when you detach, when you can look at a situation and people's experiences and say, I love that for you, man, you will invite such a feeling of serenity in your life. You will be in disbelief that that feeling exists because you've never known that you could feel that way. And I want to encourage you to step into that detachment space. Step into that I love that for you space so that you can live a life that is peaceful. And then the last thing to discuss today is how layered truth is, right? I feel like we watch a lot of TV and a lot of movies, and I don't have one that like jumps out at me, but just ride with me on this. You're watching a movie, there's clearly a villain in the movie. Always a villain. Or Marvel, or, just any of them is a villain. And then they create this episode or this part of the movie or even another whole nother movie about the villain's backstory. Oh, how they were abused as a kid, or people picked on them, and they want you to have this empathy for the villain as to why they are now this villain. That is truth right there. Layered as hell. Now, looking from the outside in, you just see the villain. You just see this bad person. Whole time, they done got picked on, they done got abused, they were forced to stand up for themselves, and now they're not taking nobody's shit. And that is the villain that you see today. But you have no idea how many times they've cried and been hurt and tried to save themselves. And they just got to a point where they could not take it anymore. And they had to turn up on everybody. And now they just don't care. And not that it's right or wrong, but that it exists, right? That there are things that we don't understand, that there are things to people's experience, that there are traumas that go unhealed, that there are experiences that they've never talked about before, that make up their truth. Like, I don't know what it is, but those variables play a part. They layer this thing so that when someone has a truth, it's not just because, they just think that. No, it's their mind has made them think that. Their body, their experience, their trauma, their healing, all of it has brought up this truth for that person. And that is why they think that way. And when you understand, just like the villain in the movies, that there are layers to truth, you will be at peace. You will be at more peace in your life because you'll understand, I see how they could think that. Even when it's about you, even when it's not true. That's actually a bar. Even when it's about you, even when it's not true, you will be at peace when you detach from needing the truth to be universal. Let me just recap really quickly because I know I talk fast and I know I said a lot. But when it comes to truthfulness and owning and walking in your truth, focus on acceptance that multiple truths do and can exist. And then the expectations, right? Not expecting everybody to believe you because of all the times or because they know you for this long or because they're this insert title here in your life. Don't have those expectations. Don't expect people to know the words to the scene and you never give them a copy of the script. You get what I'm saying? They don't know. And so when you release that expectation, when you release that control, you invite in more peace into your life. And then lastly, truth is super layered, okay? Many versions of it exist for many reasons for many people. And when you have that awareness, you are able to offer empathy for people's truths. You stop saying, I can't believe you thought that. And you start saying, man, wow, you thought that. That's interesting. Okay, I can see that. I don't agree with it. I don't believe it, but I can see it, right? Acceptance isn't agreement. It's peace. It is just peace. That's it. Now we've got through the root, y'all. And I know that was a lot. It had me over here in tears if y'all did not see that. Acceptance isn't agreement. It's peace. So now that we've gotten through the root of the segment, let's get to the questions that help us to elevate our thoughts to the rise, right? Where can you allow others the space to live their truth without making it mean something about you? A lot of times where we find conflict with truth is because we think that it tells a story about us that is not true. Like, for example, if I let my family believe that I changed the will, then that would make me a bad person. Does it make me a bad person? No, because I didn't do that. And I could have fought them on that. But I just let them think what they want to think. Because I know and own and walk in my own truth. And them believing that has no bearing on my existence. I still made it to Thailand. I still am married. I still make money. I still got this podcast. You know what I'm saying? They probably still believe that I changed the will. I don't know and I don't care because it has no space. It means nothing about me. The next rise question is, what's one area of your life where you could let go of needing everyone to see things the same way? I already told y'all my story. So you're going to have to come up with that answer on your own. But examine different areas of your life, spiritually, physically, mentally, relationally, with your siblings, with your parents, with friends. What is one area, it would work even, right? What's one area of your life where you could let go of needing everyone to see things the same way? That will absolutely invite more peace in your life every time you can reflect on one area and then pivot the thought, get to the root of it, and then rise, right? And then the last question, how might your current truths be preparing to evolve again? And this one I have something different to like share, because I once thought that I was going to be single for life. I was not even prepared to be like a wife. I was like, no. Even when I was playing house growing up, I was a single person, a single woman with suitors. I had money. I always knew I was going to have money. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to travel and I'll meet them in whatever city I meet them in, and then we'll keep it moving. Because I grew up not seeing marriage. I grew up like my grandma was married. One of my cousins is married. End scene. You know what I'm saying? Like that's married to me. And so I didn't really feel the need to be married because I was like, well, they're fine. They're not married and they're thriving in their own ways, you know? So cool. I don't need to be married. And then I met my husband, who at the time was not my husband. And I was like, man, maybe there's a time where I might like actually want to be married to this man. And here we are, married 2 years, going on 3, you know, like that truth evolved as I healed and experienced and changed my perspective. And you will find that if you look at your truths, one or a few may be preparing to evolve again. And that is because you've healed something. And that is because you've experienced more or differently. And then also because you're allowing yourself to change perspective, which is so beautiful. And it just is, it's congruent with evolution, right? And that is why we're here. When you reflect on these questions and you tell yourself the truth, the new truth, the evolved truth, you will absolutely rise to your highest self. You will become a different person, and it will open your life up to more peace and more love and more light. And I really, really hope that you take some time to reflect on these today. Self-ownership, the ultimate, the ultimate self-ownership and truthfulness is standing 10 toes down without needing to be the truth for everyone. You don't have to convince people in order for something to be valid. You don't. You shouldn't have to. And you should be aware of people who need that convincing in your life for their truths. Like, just take account of who those people are, because those are the ones that will challenge your truths and make you say things, do things, gaslight you into feeling like your truth is invalid because it doesn't match their own. So look and reflect and take ownership, self-ownership of standing 10 toes down without needing something to be true for everyone. When you can do that with your truths, that's how you ultimately know that you are at peace and you are detached and you love it for everyone, including yourself. I want you to take a moment this week to look at where you feel the need to correct someone else's truth instead of saying, I love that for you. Sometimes we have conversations and we need to do this dance with people where they say something and then you're like, but I don't know if that makes sense, or I don't know if that, you feel the need to do this dance with people and their truths and their lives. Like I said, if somebody was to tell me that they want to be a fairy for the next 5 years, go off then, sis. Okay, be a fairy then. As long as you don't try to come over here and when I say, hey girl, hey, you like, no, say, hey fairy, hey to me, I don't know about all of that, okay? You want to be a fairy, be a fairy. But once it starts to conflict with my daily activities, what I'm doing in my life, if it's harmful to me, then I'm going to push back on it. But if it's not, the world is our oyster. Do your thing, okay? And that level of detachment. I want you to notice those moments where that feels tough for you. This week, look at where you feel the need to correct someone else's truth and examine why you feel that way. And if you can say or think, I love that for you, how often can you do that? And how does it feel to you when you're able to do that in those moments? And here's my final question. What truth am I currently living now that feels new, scary, or liberating? And I want you to examine that question because this is life. Evolution is life. In order to thrive, in order to go after your vision, in order to be, go after your passions and what is really on your heart here, you have to evolve. And you have to be able to be honest about the things that were once true for you and no longer stand true anymore. And it doesn't make you weak. It makes you live more fully and more fearlessly. And it is inspiring for other people to see you do that. For you to be like, yo, I definitely thought that. I don't think that anymore. I really was moving based on this truth. And now I don't move like that anymore. Like in the US, they want you to believe that the rest of the world is a third world country. And then you get out of the US and you're like, okay. So this is what y'all call third world. Because, babe, thriving over here, okay? I've never held that truth, but other people do hold that truth. And when it comes to me and them asking like, oh, I thought that was, I say, just come. Look at my YouTube. Look at what I do on a daily basis. That will help you to see that there are multiple truths that is layered and they all actually exist. That yes, there are some countries outside the US that are third world. And yes, sometimes the US is lying about the third world. And so really feel into where you are now and what truths you're living now that feel new, scary, or liberating to you. And clap for yourself for the evolution of those truths. Beautiful friends, another episode of From the Ground to the Crown. I am honored feels so low on the feeling scale for me because I've been going through a lot of things in my life. I've gone through so many things and it didn't really all feel connected. And with this podcast, with this community, with your support, with you helping me to pick the affirmations that we do next on the topics, even with this affirmation card deck that I created. If you're watching this, then you could see my Hey Friend Hey affirmation card deck that will come out. I need to just... Anywho, I am honored to be able to have all these stories and experiences and share them with you and tie them into things that are real as hell. Like, owning truth is real to me, And so pay attention to the times that you feel like you're selling your truths and who you feel like you need to sell them to, because that will help you to have more discernment around how you feel when you're not truly owning your truth and walking in it. If you feel like you have to sell it, you're not owning it. And I am encouraging you to let your truths evolve. You don't have to say, this is who I am. This is who I've always been. You don't have to say, this is true for me because this person told me, or because I read it in this book, or because I saw it on this. You don't have to do any of those things. I mean, my husband and I, just quick story, my husband and I were taking a walk this past week and we met this guy and he just talked to us. We were just minding our business, recording content for YouTube. And he sat and he's from China and he told us about these experiences and we told him about our experiences. And of course we talked about like expat life and leaving the US and why we did it. And we're Black millennials, young married couple. And we're telling him our experience and our truth. And he was so damn grateful for it. Because, of course, in China, they have a different experience of the United States, of Americans, and of Black Americans, I'm sure. But having this one conversation changed what he knew to be true about our experience. It shed light on a new truth for him. And in that moment, he evolved to a higher version of himself because he was accepting that his truth that he once believed existed. And now with this experience, perspective, and from our healing, he's now able to own a different truth. Boom. That's it. That is what we're doing here. And that is what I hope that you feel once you've listened to this episode. I hope that you feel like you can own many truths, that things could once have been true for you and no longer be true for you, and maybe be true for you and again in the future. And you don't have to convince a soul that that is your truth. All you have to do is walk in it 10 toes down, never selling it, and never let it conflict with other people's experience here. No judgment, just love. I'm done. That's it for this episode, y'all. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for being in community with me. Thank you so much for the support of From the Ground to the Crown. As always, if this episode felt something like true for you, if you felt good listening to it, please share it. I'm growing this community organically from the ground to the crown. Okay, and I would love and appreciate your participation in helping me spread the word. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Spotify podcasts, and Apple podcasts. Follow me on Instagram and Threads at It's Kenesha B. I also have like a Instagram for the podcast. It's the number 2 The Crown Pod. 2 The Crown Pod. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll actually see me share content and collaborate with the page. So you can follow both of those Instagram pages. Share this episode with a friend. Come back next week. I'll have another episode for you. Thank you so much again for being in community with me. I'm loving you from over here. And I hope that you walk in your truth and you own your truth from today moving forward. Have an amazing day, friends. Are you ready? Get set. Let's grow.